Good day doodlers, welcome to Draw Cartoons. As requested today I'm going to show you how to draw Fat Thor from Avengers Endgame. Thanks to Xavier for the suggestion. If there's something you'd like me to draw too, let me know in the comments below. Make sure you watch the whole video today because as always I've got some great tips for you. You're going to need a pencil, paper, an eraser and a Sharpie to go over your sketch with. Let's go! Let's get started. But first, if you want to learn to draw the fast and easy way, make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. Let's begin! So with your pencil, as always, we're going to start with the head. So draw a nice kind of tall oval for the head. Not too tall, but certainly higher than it is wide. Once you've done that, cut it right down the middle. And then keep going until you get to about as tall as you'd like Thor to be. I'm going to draw my line about here. That's where the floor is. That's where his feet are going to be standing in a moment. So the height of my Thor is 1, 2, 3, maybe 3.5 heads in height. So once you've drawn that, right underneath the head we're going to draw another big circular shape. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle, but actually it's probably better if you don't draw a perfect circle. Maybe make it a little bit taller than it is wide again. And once you've drawn that, we're going to quickly outline the shapes of the legs. So starting here, I'm going to draw a line that curves down towards the ankles like this, just coming out of the side of his torso, and then a shoe sticking out like this. And then I'm going to draw the other one exactly the same way. Going to come out but then curve down towards the ankle, come back out for the shoe, and bring it back down to the floor. Once that's done, we're going to draw the inside of each leg. So I'm going to start the left heel here, I'm going to come up and I'm going to curve away, or rather towards the inside of the body as I reach the middle, bridge it across here, and then repeat the same on the other side, just kind of curve down towards that heel. So when you draw that, you should end up with the thighs looking a bit thicker at the top, and the ankles being a lot thinner than the thighs, like that. So once you've got that shape drawn in, we can quickly kind of block in the shapes of the arms that we want. So the arms are going to be quite thick, obviously Thor's very strong, so I recommend we start here at the side of the head and just gently, very gently, you're going to rub this out in a bit, it's just kind of show you what to do. Draw a line that curves down to about here. Draw a line across for where the wrist is going to go, and then draw another line very gently up to about here. Do the same on the other side, and I know it looks a little bit funny for the arms to seem to be coming out the side of the head, but it's going to make sense in just a moment, don't worry. So again, just going to draw that wrist across, and then bridge it back to be touching the torso. Now we're going to give everything a lot more shape very soon, but for now we're just kind of finishing off those guidelines. So I would recommend drawing the hands in now, so starting from this wrist. If we start right in the middle, we'll draw a bump that comes out a little bit like this, and then a thumb that juts down, comes back, and then rejoins with the wrist like that. So we end up with almost like a bubble writing R without its leg here, if that kind of makes sense. And once you've drawn that, we'll draw 3 fingers all curving in like this. 1, 2, and 3. Might look a little bit better if you make that last finger a little bit smaller than the rest, because it is his pinky finger and that is obviously the smallest of the fingers. So once you've drawn that, just draw a small bump for the rest of the palm here. And we're going to leave that hand be for now because we're going to draw in the weapon last. So on this side, another thumb that kind of curves out just like this. Bring it in, draw a line across, and then draw the other 3 fingers all in a closed fist. I have done a tutorial on how to draw this exact kind of hand before. I will link it up here. So the link should appear now for you if you're having trouble with that. But for now, I'm just going to kind of move on. So now we're at the point where we can start adding some details. So let's cut this head in half again, right across the middle here. And then I'm going to cut the top half in half again across the middle of that, and then the bottom half across the middle again. So we end up with 4 pretty evenly shaped kind of quarters. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now that we've got those shapes in place, we know where to draw all the parts of Thor's head. So don't forget, you want to make sure you're doing that very gently because you're going to erase that later when you go over it with your Sharpie. You don't need those guidelines later. So quickly we'll draw in the nose. The nose is right here in the center of the face. It's just a small blob like that, kind of pointing downwards. And either side of it are the eyes. So I'm going to draw an eyebrow here that's kind of angled down like he's frowning. You can draw them at any angle you want really. You can give him different kinds of expressions, but for me I'm going to make him look like he means business. So 2 eyebrows like that, and then just underneath, a small curve, and then it runs along that guideline I drew a moment ago, and then we link the end of the eyebrow to the nose like that with just a small straight line. So I'm going to do that again on the other side just to show you again. So a curve that comes around and meets with the guideline, follows it along, and they're going to join the nose with the eyebrow there. Now to draw the pupils, you can draw the pupils anywhere you want really. You can draw them both pointing to the left like that, or you can draw them both pointing to the right. You could draw them up like that, like he's looking up at Thanos maybe. But I'm going to draw mine pretty central, so I'm going to draw them in the middle, and I'm going to make sure that the pupils are touching both the eyebrow and the bottom of the eye, and it gives us the impression that he's looking at us. So let's move on to the hair real quick. So the hair starts along this guideline here, that's why we drew this in. So I'm going to start here, I'm going to start drawing some lines that kind of curve away from that middle. I did just do a tutorial on how to draw hair, which I'll link here again, which will give you kind of the gist of what I'm doing now. But for now we're just going to kind of follow this line with a bunch of wavy hairs going down like this, and again on the other side just a few flicks away from that center there, and then bring it down either side of the face, give it kind of a wavy messy look. And then I'm just going to add to this, so this middle line here can act as the kind of parting of his hair, so we'll draw hair coming away from that middle part either side, and then we'll just draw the very top of his hair so we can get the overall shape out here. So lots of waves, lots of bumps. Nice and easy once you get some practice in, but at first it can seem quite challenging to get that right. But all I'm really doing here is just adding a bunch of curves that just kind of form wavy locks either side of his head. You can add a bit more detail if you want. You can really save that for when you're going over it with your Sharpie if you're feeling lucky, if you're feeling like risking it. So once you've got a nice kind of length of hair on either side, it doesn't have to be completely even by the way, but if you prefer it that way, well, that's why we're working in a pencil, you can fix it right away. But to draw the beard, start either side of the nose and draw a line that meets with the hair that you just drew, like this. And then along this guideline here is where his mouth is going to be. I'm going to draw his mouth closed with a small line on each side, just to emphasize that this guy has gained a little bit of weight. So you see those lines there, that one and that one, either side of the mouth. These kind of exaggerate the size of his cheeks if we draw that way. So finally, just going to draw the beard coming down into the torso a bit. It's a very, very long beard. So there's a lot of guidelines there. If you want, if you're very careful with your eraser, you can start erasing them now if you want. If you think it looks a bit messy. Honestly, it's probably better waiting until you've gone over the whole thing with a Sharpie though, so I'm only going to erase that much for now. So let's start giving him some definition, or shapes rather. So we're going to draw his chest. Now obviously he's very big in this form, so we're going to draw his chest as two lumps very far apart like this, and they overlap with the arms a little bit like that. Okay, we'll draw a big belly button here, and it'll look a little bit better if you stretch it sideways. Instead of just drawing a dot like this, if you draw it kind of spread out like that, again it will kind of exaggerate how big our character is. Now the belly's looking a little bit too round, so let's just define that shape a little bit. We'll come down from the chest a little bit here, and we'll just kind of bump it out at the sides just a tiny bit, and then bring it back to the middle. So you can see it doesn't look like I've done much there. All I've done is just add a little bit of shape, so I've gone a little bit thinner right under the chest, but then I've gone out a bit towards the bottom of the belly. And it'll make all the difference when you go over it with your Sharpie. For now it might not look like much, but if you go for that, it'll look better later. So those arms are looking very basic, so let's work on those. Let's draw a small bump for the shoulder up here. Another bump for the bicep. Only subtle bumps, don't make them too big. And then one more bump that comes back down to the wrist like this. That's his forearm. So we need another one for the forearm here. And then the last bump for the bicep can kind of sit underneath the chest there. Now guess what happens next? That's right, we have to draw it on the other side. So another bump for the shoulder, just ending about here. Another small bump for the bicep. And then one more for the forearm, and make sure it meets up with that wrist there. So again, we'll come away from the wrist for a bump for the forearm, and then anything that's left of the bicep, we'll just kind of tuck it in under the chest like that. Now for the trousers, we've got a small pad of pattern over this side, so we'll draw a box, and then we'll divide it into 4 smaller boxes like that. You can refine that and make it look a little bit better when you go over it with your Sharpie. But for now, we're just kind of getting that shape in. It's a box divided into 4 with 3 lines across like that. And then where his knee is, or where his thigh and his shin separate, there's just 3 more lines like this. And remember, you have to draw that on both sides or else it's going to look very lopsided. And there's a small separation here between his trousers and the shoes that he's wearing. Now we'll draw in some lines here for the gloves that he's wearing over his forearms. If you give it a slight curve instead of drawing a very straight line, it will really kind of show off the muscle that he's got going on in his forearm here. If you see this kind of curve I've given that shape. Now for each of his fingers we need to kind of cut off the gloves because they are fingerless gloves. So if we draw a line here and then another one here, here and here. So this is where his fingers are showing and this is where a little bit of glove is. So I'm going to do that on the other one just to show you again. So I'm just kind of cutting off the very ends of the fingers of his gloves. So finally, it's time to draw that weapon. So let's get that drawn right now. So let's begin drawing Stormbreaker by coming out here where the thumb closes. We're going to draw a shape up, and the handle of Stormbreaker, obviously because it's made out of Groot's arm, it's a bit thicker at the end. So let's just draw a kind of bulge, almost like a Q-tip at the end, before bringing it back to the hand like that. And we'll draw the pommel down here. Again, it's a little bit thicker at the end. It's not exactly perfect because it's just broken bark at the end of the day. And to help give it that look, we'll draw a few lines going along it like that. So I did that really quickly, so I'll just show you again on the much bigger side of Stormbreaker. So to get that kind of uneven wood look, we're going to draw a few lines that kind of go up along the shape like that, but then just stop. Don't go all the way. And then draw another one that comes down from the top, give it a little bit of a wiggle, bit of a zigzag, and then stop. They almost look like cracks or splinters in wood, which is exactly what we're going for. Try and get them to look uneven in length and shape, really kind of vary it up. And this might be quite tricky to do with your Sharpie, but when you go over it with your Sharpie, you might want to press very, very gently. So now for the blade of Stormbreaker, the very, very front. So we'll come away from the top and curve upwards, like this. Bring a big curve down for the very, very edge of the blade, and then bring it back towards the handle, just like that. Now for the hammer side of Stormbreaker, again we're going to curve up, but we're going to stop a lot sooner. We're going to jut down like this at a sharp angle, come right across, jut across again, and then curve it back in, and make sure that this line more or less meets up with this one, and the same goes for this one and that one, in that it looks like they're just kind of going behind this end of Groot's arm here. So Stormbreaker's got a pretty cool pattern on it, so let's draw that in now. We're going to draw an arrow shape that almost makes it to the end but stops and then goes back towards the handle. And then on this side, it's got a flatter end and it ends about here, so draw a line across and then come back. Now back to the blade, we're going to draw a line that kind of follows the shape of that one, but this time gets to the end and then comes back to the handle, just like that. So with the hammer side, again this kind of follows the shape, but it stops and then goes up to the end there where it kind of, where these lines meet up. And again on this side, just drawing those L shapes in, and then we'll cut it all off with a line that runs along the end of the pattern that we drew earlier, just like that. Then one more detail, the very, very end of the blade, just to kind of accentuate how sharp it is, a small curve that follows the shape of the end. And if you want, you can add some small lines along it like that. Make the blade look like it's been recently sharpened, if you like. And there we go. So our sketch of Thor at this point is actually done. So get your Sharpie ready and go over all the lines you want to keep. Don't bother with any of the guidelines. For example, you don't need this anymore, or any of these in the beard. It's a very messy looking beard, isn't it? So try and ignore the guidelines and just go over the lines you want to keep, and you'll end up with your very own awesome drawing of Fat Thor. While you're going over your sketch with your Sharpie, it might be a great time to correct any last mistakes you spot as you go and fix them. And there he is, the Norse god of thunder himself, Thor, wielding the legendary Stormbreaker. A big shout out to Xavier Gabriel. Thanks for being such a great fan, and thanks for the suggestion. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Don't forget that you can now share your artwork in my Discord channel. Hit the link in the description below to join and start sharing right away. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. Until next time,